Welcome to VoteProPot-Cast, the award-winning cannabis news podcast brought to you by VoteProPot.com. Here are your hosts, Phil Adams, Jay Britton, and Andrew McCreadies.
Legal cannabis sales in the U.S. are on a pace to top $15 billion in 2020. How about that?
Damn. Not too shabby.
The Biden-Sanders Unity Task Force releases its report today, as we are recording, and 7-Eleven proving to be none too friendly towards cannabis. We have that and a whole lot more. Welcome, everybody. Thanks again for joining us here on VoteProPot-Cast. Glad to have you with us. Jay, Andrew, you guys all here and ready to talk about all things marijuana?
We are. And I got a haircut. Check me out.
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah. You look.
Who cut your hair? My wife.
You're looking fairly.
My wife.
No, very nice.
Yeah. Good job.
Good job. You're looking very butch.
Thank you. Glad you like it.
We're going to start off today, though, with some news out of the nation's capital. A new House funding bill that was unveiled this week, and that's the bill to fund the federal agencies for the next year, will include a number of pro-cannabis riders, including provisions to protect state medical marijuana laws from federal interference, relax the banking restrictions, expand cannabis research, oversee the burgeoning hemp and CBD industries, which is very important, and finally, at last, allow recreational cannabis sales in the District of Columbia. So that's good news coming out of the House of Representatives. Now, a lot of these bills, we've talked about this a number of times. A lot of this stuff, these provisions have passed in the House before, either as standalone legislation or they've been inserted into the coronavirus relief bills. But all met their doom in the Senate.
As is so often the case.
But what about the CBD hemp one? That gets me. The CBD hemp industry, I mean, they sit there and go, CBD and hemp is legal. You can grow it. And all these farmers went out and grew all this hemp. Then they go, yeah, you can grow it, but you really just can't do anything with it.
You can't do anything with it. Yeah.
I mean, you can't make edibles out of it. You can't. And then to process it was a lot more difficult than they thought. And so they need relief. They need help and then the coronavirus came by. I say the hemp industry in the United States, was a total failure, especially because of the coronavirus. But I see CBD companies just giving product away, trying to get customers.
Yeah, it's a shame. And now the standalone bills, I think the MORE Act was one of them, and that was incorporated expungement of arrest records and that sort of thing, as well as, recreational medical protections. That died an ignominious death in the Senate as well. And the attempts to slip it into the coronavirus, that was never going to pass because people were going to stop and say, look, this is not about a wish list for everything you want to pass. This is about getting help to people. So that was never going to go anywhere. But it seems that the Democrats in the House and more than a couple of Republicans are being fairly dogged. And, they keep putting pro-cannabis provisions into legislation. It's like they're throwing the spaghetti against the wall and hoping something sticks.
Yeah.
And I sure hope something does.
At least compared to not that many years ago, we're voting on it. At least they're just getting out there. For years, it never, ever made it.
This would have been unthinkable 10 years ago. Yeah.
Right, never would have happened. So we're making some progress.
Yeah, but we got to see what happens in the Senate. That's,
Well, nothing's going to happen.
Nothing's going to happen in the Senate.
But between now and November,
nothing.
Nothing.
Dries
now, I was talking to...
Why should they?
I was talking to our friend Jimmy Young over at Pro Cannabis Media, and folks, if you haven't checked out Pro Cannabis Media, Weed Talk News, you really need to check it. It's great stuff, good content, and a lot going on. Jimmy was talking about, he said, I wouldn't be surprised if like sometime in late October, Trump drops the bomb and deschedules,
What?
because he could do, he's saying, well, nothing would put, I wouldn't put anything past Trump.
Well, do you think Trump would think
for an October surprise?
Do you think he believes he'll get a lot of votes if he did it? I mean, that's why I think he would do it. I can't see him having this stroke of consciousness going, "Oh, it's just the right thing to do." No,
I think Jimmy is taking the more cynical approach, saying that he probably thinks he can get votes by doing
especially young votes. I would imagine, that he's doing pretty poorly in the polls with anybody under about 40 right now. So
right, but if he comes out and goes, what he's going to have to say is he can't if he legalizes it. Well, great, thanks, buddy. I'm still not going to vote for you. He's going to have to say, if you reelect me, I'll do it, is what he would probably say, right?
That's good. Maybe.
It's hard to say.
Not getting votes. I don't know.
But again, we get back into this discussion of it's a popular issue and a position, but not a high priority with just about anyone.
But also, it's popular on both sides of the aisle. Right, so I can
see our ilk.
Well, there's a bunch of Republicans that are really pro-weed. I mean, and that would definitely support the president if he was going to turn to pro-pot. But I don't see that happening. Just all the rumblings I've seen, some of his stuff that, especially the Attorney General, and he's just been on record for so long, just for hating weed. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think.
Well, we'll have to see. Now, the other side of the coin is what Biden is going to propose, and he came out with a proposal this week, and he and the Unity Task Force came out with a report as well, right, Jay?
Yeah, we talked about it last week, the Unity Task Force, which was Biden's attempt to kind of show his respect for Bernie Sanders. When Biden won the nomination, he went to Sanders and said, let's put a unity force together. You grab some folks from your camp, I grab some from mine. They'll get together and spend a couple of months coming up with ideas for our platform so that we can share ideas, et cetera, et cetera. So we talked about it last week, and there was some rumblings about some conflict between the two camps with regard to cannabis law. We know where Biden stands on it. And, he's honestly felt this way for a long time. And Andrew's made the point he has evolved, but he still is for decriminalization and more research. Okay?
Right.
Well, the report came out today, and I literally just saw it an hour before we came on here to start recording, so I could not read every word of it, but I did a search, for the word cannabis, marijuana, and I found some of the stuff that's in there. Here's a paragraph. Here's a quote for the paragraph. And let me say this. Most of this subject matter that this Unity Task Force is working on is criminal reform and a lot of other things as well, like they're talking about climate and economy and so forth. But a lot of it's criminal reform, and Bernie Sanders feels, and so do we, and so do a lot of people, that this subject falls under criminal reform. So here's the quote. It's just one paragraph that I found. It says, quote, substance use disorders are diseases, not crimes. Democrats believe no one should be in prison solely because they use drugs. I agree with that. Democrats will decriminalize marijuana use and reschedule it through executive action on the federal level. We will support legalization of medical marijuana, they use the term marijuana, pardon me, and believe states should be able to make their own decisions with regard to legalizing recreational use or adult use. The Justice Department should not launch federal prosecutions of conduct that is legal at state level. That's very important to Andrew because he's talking about bar, and that's exactly what they're saying there. If it's legal in my state, feds, you stay the fuck out. It's none of your business. All past criminal convictions for cannabis should be automatically expunged. And rather than involving the criminal justice system, Democrats support increased use of drug courts, harm reduction intervention, and treatment diversion programs for those struggling with substance disorders.
Well, they've been doing that for years.
Yeah, but my question to you guys is, how much of this will make it into the platform? How much of this will will Joe Biden accept? And so let me paraphrase.
That's a good question.
Yeah, here are there are 5 issues that were in that paragraph. Decriminalizing marijuana use federally.
Right.
So it's no longer a crime, it's a ticket. 2, rescheduling it through executive action. Now, that's Bernie's thing. He made it very clear that first day, we talked about it, first day, he's going to have an executive order that deschedules it. Number 3, support legalization of medical across the board federally. So it's up to the states. Allow the states to make their decision with regard to adult use. All past criminal convictions will be automatically expunged, and the final one is increase the courts and so forth rather than using the justice system in prisons for people who have drug issues. So those 6 issues, Phil, you go first. What do you think? I mean, which of those do you think Biden will accept or not accept?
Well, I think those are all part of Biden's proposals. I mean,
well, no, because the executive order part certainly isn't. I mean, Biden said he's willing to decriminalize, but he wants more studies and research before he takes further action.
Right. Well, that's an interesting question, and quite honestly, there are a lot of people, myself included, and a lot of players in the industry who say that is at best a half measure. It really doesn't get to the heart of the problem. As a matter of fact, this is what the NORML has come out and said. The executive director for NORML, Eric Altieri, said, quote, "It is impractical at best and disingenuous at worst for the Biden campaign to move ahead with these policy proposals," end quote. Basically, what he's saying is that the proposals for decriminalization and rescheduling, and we need to make the point that rescheduling is not descheduling. Rescheduling means it goes from Schedule 1 to maybe Schedule 2 or something like that. Descheduling means it's off the Controlled Substances Act list entirely. When you simply reschedule, it doesn't change the classification as contraband. It is still a federally controlled substance and would continue an overall enforcement policy that really has clearly failed. So I don't think this passes muster at all. I find myself in the odd position of agreeing with Bernie Sanders and his camp on this. But when they're right, I agree with them.
Yeah. Well, let me ask Andrew. What do you think the odds are, Andrew, that Joe Biden would accept descheduling as part of the platform? Slim to none, or do you think there's a chance?
By executive order?
No, just in general, would he accept in the platform that if he's elected, he's going to come up with
rescheduling?
Yes. Yeah, you don't think he'll deschedule? Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think it'll happen. The descheduling.
I don't know. I think he'll avoid that. I think if he's put on the spot, he'll say he'd consider it. I don't think he's going to come out against it.
Do you think he's afraid of losing votes if he agrees to that? Or, I mean, that's a reasonable.
Well, that's what I can't understand. I think he's still old school, and he still thinks there are some people out there that are sort of conservative, that conservative Democrat that still thinks I
think that's a good point.
Abortion's okay, but he still shouldn't smoke
and
weed.
He desperately needs those Reagan Democrats.
That's kind of his base.
Yeah, well, it's not his base. The problem is his base is the far left right now. He needs those people in the middle. He needs them badly. So I think you're right about that.
Everybody does. Yeah.
Well, we'll have to see what the platform ends up. I mean, it's important for us.
I think, like we said before, I think his position's evolving. I think that really he would, when it comes down to push to shove, that he would, through executive order, deschedule. I think he would do that. I could see him doing it. I don't know if he will, but I could see him doing it.
So let's see. What else you got, Jay?
Well, I got some state updates. You want to do those now?
Let's go with some state updates.
Well, what I'm doing for my state updates is based on a bunch of articles I've looked at, including mostly on NORML's website. And that is a subject that we've talked about in the past few weeks. And that's the impact that COVID-19 has had on legalization in states with regard to them, especially with ballot initiatives, because they haven't been able to go out and get the signatures. And so several states like Florida, Oklahoma, Missouri, and North Dakota, and a couple others have essentially been unable to gather the signatures that they were sure they could get because they can't go door to door, right? So they have essentially given up on getting the signatures, and they're probably not going to be able to have ballot initiatives. On the other hand, this week, proponents in Nebraska, Montana, and Arizona have collected enough signatures despite COVID to get initiatives for adult use. So that's pretty exciting. Beyond that, we have New Jersey and South Dakota who already have ballots. They've already had the signatures. So that's 5 states that have adult use ballot initiatives definitely coming up. Oh, almost definitely. I say definitely because Nebraska, Montana, and Arizona have turned in far more signatures than they need. But there's some really fucked up, crazy, depending on the state, requirements. You have to have a certain percentage of some counties. You got to have this. So they still have to validate these signatures. But for all intents and purposes, they're pretty confident that they have enough signatures and they'll be validated and they'll be able to do that.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's exciting. That's exciting. And you've also got ballot initiatives coming up for medical in Mississippi. What? In South Dakota. So that's that's pretty exciting.
And here we thought we were going to have to wait another year or another election cycle for these to come through.
Just a few weeks ago.
And some of them probably will, but yeah.
Yeah, but just a few weeks ago, the scuttlebutt was, man, well, you're the one that said they need a 6-foot pen because there was just no way to go door to door. And as Andrew mentioned, a lot of these were trying to get the legislators to let them do online, registration and signature gathering. I don't think any states allowed that I'm aware of. So some of these were able to go out and get these beyond that. So that's excellent. In Arizona, despite the self-quarantine periods that were announced, cannabis advocates were able to gather 320,000 signatures, which is about twice what they needed. So once they're verified, they're pretty confident they'll have no problem. Once legalization passes in Arizona, individuals 21 and over will be able to possess cannabis from a licensed purchase it from a licensed retailer, and they'll be allowed to have up to an ounce in their possession, and the state tax would be 16%. So that's the good news, on the legalization front, despite the fact that we didn't think that was going to happen. So, Andrew, what do you think? We got Nebraska, Montana, Arizona, New Jersey, South Dakota, Mississippi, and that's it. 7 states. What do you think? Think they're all past the initiatives?
I hope so.
We all hope so.
We never.
You just don't know. You really don't. The good news is polls are good in all states. All states have, not that polls matter much at this stage of the game, but
I think this coronavirus and just the state of affairs and the world, and a lot of people are going, marijuana just doesn't seem like that big of a deal anymore. But so many people just don't give a shit about it.
I think you're absolutely right. It's just not that big of a deal.
And the coronavirus is just like the nail in the coffin.
And all the other stuff going on, all the race riots and all the other shit.
No one can get a job. It's billions of dollars and hundreds of thousands of jobs. Come on, guys.
Just legalize this shit.
Brainer.
Get it over with.
It's a no-brainer. Yeah. I mean, look at the states that are doing it, states that we never thought.
Oh, my God. Yeah, Oklahoma, Nebraska, South Dakota, crying out loud.
Mississippi?
Yeah. Mississippi, yeah.
Shut up.
Yeah, these are states that when we started this show, this podcast 2 years ago, this is a list of states we just didn't think would happen for years.
No.
And anything at first, the coronavirus, I thought, was just because the nature of quarantine was going to slow the processes down. And it did. It did slow some things down. But it increased the public opinion. To encourage legalization. I think this just in the last few months, in the last 2 months, just legalization has just become a moot point to a lot of people.
I think you're right, and I think there's a lot more that has. I mean, as more and more people, even those who weren't on our side of the argument, as more and more of them see the results, whether it be in their state or in neighboring states, and and politicians are seeing the revenues, and the general public is seeing reports on television and in the media about medical, and my God, this stuff seems to work for this, and cannabis, CBD. These are
Charlotte Figge. You see,
yeah. I mean, I really think that it's obvious things are. You can tell by the polls it's 70% now of American public are pro,
and that is filtering down into the the places where they don't. I mean, that's 70% is a national figure, but locally those numbers are filtering down, starting to come up as well. So
yeah, I mean, my own state, Jesus, who thought Virginia would have decriminalization and a THC medical program this year, right now? I never thought, a year ago, I didn't believe that.
No. Well, and that kind of speaks to the not just the voting numbers, but the sales numbers. The sales of it. Now, this is according to the latest fact book published by Marijuana Business Daily, and anyone who's in the marijuana biz needs to check out Marijuana Business Daily. According to their fact book, U.S. cannabis legal sales are on a pace to top $15 billion in 2020, and I believe that is going to be a legal record because it represents, that figure represents a 40% increase over 2019. So
wow.
40% is a big jump. Now, and again, we emphasize legal sales. The illegal sales are probably just as robust as they ever were. So if people are buying it, at some point you got to figure they're going to be voting for it, right?
That's it. Yeah, that sums it up.
Now, in California, they estimate that the black market is 4 times the legal market. So there's a lot of states where there is no legal market, so it's all black market. So
right.
We're trying to come up with a figure of what the black market in cannabis in the United States is, and even if it's 4 times, but it could be as much as 10 times. Some people say,
right,
what it is. So, it could be, we're talking, hundreds of billions of dollars.
Yeah, potentially, yeah, right.
That it's being spent every year in the United States
already.
$100 billion. So it's a legalization. The only thing legalization is going to do is tax that. They're going to spend that money regardless. Let's just tax
those states are going to get some revenue out of it.
Right, because they're already spending that money.
Yeah.
Right. That 40% increase over last year is not an increase in total sales. It's just the cannabis industry coming out of the closet.
Right. That's a good way to put it.
That's all it is. I don't do it very often anyway, but I could probably tell you that I don't think I'm going to be shopping at 7-Eleven anytime soon, because I think there's something that's going on with them.
What happened in Oklahoma? Oklahoma, apparently 7-Eleven Parent Corporation, which is based in Texas, I believe Dallas.
The Southland Corporation, I think it is.
Right. Well, I think they bought some properties in Oklahoma. Now, I'm not really sure if it was purposeful or regardless, but of the properties that they were buying up, 4 of the properties had medical marijuana dispensaries or businesses in them.
Right.
And as soon as they bought the properties, they said, no, we're not renewing. We want you out. There's no discussion, nothing, just bang, you're out. And you have till the end of July to get out. And then
isn't that messed up?
Then they came out and said, it's because we're against it. We think it's illegal and it's wrong. We won't have anything to do with the cannabis industry.
Wow. So it wasn't because they wanted to use the property for some other reason. It was because they're so anti-cannabis.
They just wanted to deny the dispensaries.
Well,
damn.
Actually, what I think happened was there's franchises of 7-Elevens, and a lot of times they'll buy a franchise and they'll open up the building, they'll open up the store, and then the franchisee loses it or closes it down. They still have that stereotypical 7-Eleven building. So a lot of times the parent corporation will come back in and buy that property to turn it over to another franchisee or turn it into a corporate location.
Oh, I see.
So what probably happened was some dispensaries, because these empty 7-Elevens was probably a good location for a dispensary. It was probably a bunch of them, and people didn't put dispensaries in them. I think maybe that's what happened, but I'm not sure.
That's crazy.
Well, we'll have to keep our eye on that before I initiate a boycott or anything like that.
Yeah, because I don't know. You don't know if it's corporate or because you might See, I thought about this. Everyone's talking boycotts nowadays. My local 7-Eleven guy, the guy who works there, they're going all the time. They have great coffee. They're all friendly to me. Why should I boycott him? I mean, he's just some hardworking guy. He might be the franchisee. What the fuck does he care about? What is into it? And also, 7-Eleven, last time I checked, they sell the shit out of rolling papers. And I'd say 90% of what they sell are fucking munchies. Jesus, the Slurpee was invented by stoners.
That's true.
When I was in college,
your go-to spot when you get
just
munchies,
downstream from the dispensaries.
When I was in college, we would get stoned, go to 7-Eleven, and get cherry Slurpees and beef jerkies, and we'd call it Slurps and Jerks.
That's right.
I mean, that's great. Yeah. I mean, that's like perfect stoner food, sweet and salty.
Right.
Slurps and Jerks.
Well, boo on them.
Yeah, boo on them.
Yeah.
Well,
one stop store. I ain't stopped there no more.
I ain't lying.
Okay.
So,
speaking of that reminds me, sometimes when you get stoned and go to the 7-Eleven, you get high with your parents. I never did.
No.
I saw a video recently there was just a bunch of people, men. It was like two men and a woman who were obviously in their like late 50s, 60s, and they had adult children, and they got high with them for the first time. And like one was a woman, and she was talking about her dad, who was very conservative and very anti-drug, man, growing up. And they were there, and there was like a bong and some joints on the table, and we're gonna like get high together. And they were talking about it. And then there was another man with his father, and then there was a woman with her mom. And they all said, okay, well, they had joints or bongs, and they sort of made a choice. And the women, the daughter with her mom, they did bong hits, and they were just like laughing their asses off pretty much right out of the gate. The conservative father said, "Oh, we'll just do one of these joints here," and he took it and stuck it in his mouth and fired it up like, "Oh, okay,
knew what he was doing,
this?" And I'm going,
all right.
"You've done that before, dude."
Like riding a bicycle, baby. It comes right back to you.
And it was funny. And they started asking each other's questions. Like,
that's so funny.
And one was, "Have you ever gotten drunk and woken up naked?" And the mother was like, "Oh yeah, I have to almost every time I've gotten drunk, woke up naked." And the daughter was like, "What? This is freaking up." And then the woman with the father who was really strict. They started giggling and laughing. They started connecting. She was hugging him and going, and then she got all choked up. "Dad, I love you, man. You're just great."
Oh, that's awesome, man. Have you seen that video of the grandmothers that get high?
Oh, the three grandmothers. That's hilarious.
That's pretty damn funny, man.
I haven't seen that one.
Everybody's probably seen it on YouTube.
There's another one with a bunch of ex-cops that did it. And they
really? I haven't seen that one. Okay.
And again,
I remember...
And in that one of the cops, he picked up, he's like, hitting up, "Yeah, okay, yeah." And
What, this first time?
Running. It's like, "Oh, man,
this is not his first rodeo.
Now, I remember in high school, a buddy of mine and I were, getting high friends, getting high buddies, and his dad, who was divorced and dating this pretty cute younger woman, came in, caught us, and they were like, "No, don't worry, you're not in trouble or anything like that." We thought we were busted, He wanted to try it, and we were like, "Really?" and we got the bong out, and this girlfriend was so adorable. She was like this Southern chick, and she's like, "Oh man, I'm really going to smoke some marijuana."
How old was she, do you think?
She was probably, his dad was probably in his, late 30s, early 40s. She was probably, early 30s. She was, old enough, but, still a younger.
Well, I think people listening to younger folks have to realize.
The young trophy wife,
have to realize.
But I think a lot of people are getting high now. Now, recently, Johnny Depp made a statement where he was talking about getting high with his 14-year-old daughter. And apparently talked to the wife about it, and then the daughter was like apparently going to do it on her own. And they said, if you're going to do it right, and make sure you get, you don't get, I guess tainted, God knows what you're going to get in the black market,
I don't.
So
I
people
don't
are commenting
that.
on that, and
14,
I've known people too, man. Who have gotten high with their kids. Now, at this point in our lives, we know a lot of people who have kids that are parents of their own, that have like kids in their 20s and 30s, And in that case, I know a lot of people who maybe not sit down with their kids and get high with them all the time, but they're like cool about it. If they're like all of a sudden at family functions, either the parent or the kid will light up. They may not smoke yet, but they'll be smoking around. And no one gives a shit anymore, and it's more acceptable. And I think you see that in families now. It's sort of like all of a sudden it's cool, no one talks about it. It's like, what? Wait a minute.
Well, let me ask you this, Jay. Would you say over the course of the years you have pilfered more of your son's weed, or he's pilfered more of your weed?
Don't ask me that question.
Nah.
Yeah. Well, my
We can skip that.
yeah, my son's in his late 20s, so but yeah, what he doesn't know won't hurt him. I'll leave it at that.
Leave it at that. All right.
No, but I tell you, I used to give him weed all the time when he was a kid. Anyway,
Hey.
Great, actually great.
Actually, I did know a guy who I used to do this Monday night poker game, and this back when we were in our 40s and 50s, and every Monday night the bunch of guys would come over, and
I remember that.
And we're at that point in our lives where we didn't know where to get weed, but if someone had it, some of those guys who were like really, they were straight around their wives and kids, but there was a joint in that poker night, and they were sucking it down like a fiend. These guys were loving it. Going back to the story we had before, people were discriminating against people, and they were hiding it from their spouses. That's what some of these guys did. And one day this guy showed up because he had a joint. We're going, where'd you get a joint from? He goes, oh, man, I found my teenage son. I found his stash, so I rolled a joint. He goes, I didn't tell my wife. I just kept it. And then, for the next couple of months, every now and then, he would show up with a joint. And we're like, oh, man, did your son get another bag? Like, this is great. And he's there going, I feel bad. I don't know if I should bust him. But I'm like, not bust him just so I could continue pinching his bag. I feel like a really horrible father. And we all said, no, you're great. You're great. You're doing because we wanted to smoke his kids' weed.
You're doing the right thing.
You're doing the right thing. So
it's his rent, I mean, it's
right.
I
think, and what's happening, I see in a lot of families, it's like no big deal. But you're seeing more and more people. I think we're going to see, are people our age going to return to medical marijuana, and their kids are going to help them do it.
Yeah, I think. I can see that.
Could be
Definitely.
Yeah, or we'll maybe help our kids. We see that a lot too. They're having health issues, and we'll maybe here try this cream or or some for chemo. God forbid.
Well, I tell you,
anyway.
I have a story too, but I think I'll save that one actually. Never mind. Move on.
We were in high school. There was a lady in our neighborhood who had cancer, and the local housewives sort of, called the local rock band and asked for some marijuana.
That's a good way to cover that story, buddy.
It's true. So eventually, in fact, she died in our neighborhood. Who was a wonderful lady. Everyone knew her.
Everyone knew her. And what happened? And this is, you got to remember, this is like 1975 or 6. We were all playing in a band together, and a woman was very ill in the last stages of very serious cancer. And her doctor said to her, because she was so nauseous from the chemo and was at the stage of giving up the chemo, and said, I keep hearing that marijuana works. So off the record, if you can get some. And this woman reached out to us and said, I know you guys smoke weed. You're on a rock band. Can you help us out? And we did. And it helped her. I mean,
good.
Yeah. I mean, so, and this is 45 years ago, whatever the hell it was.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Well, folks, that about wraps it up for this week's broadcast, webcast, podcast, any kind of cast you want to, any kind of cast you want to be. And we really are grateful that you took the time out of your busy life to listen to us blather on about cannabis and cannabis reform. And we really want to hear your points of view. If you have an opinion, a question, a correction, some factual information you want to impart to us, get in touch with us. Check us out at VoteProPot.com. If you like this episode or any of the episodes, give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, and by all means, share it with a friend. There's probably someone out there that that would enjoy listening to us, and definitely get in touch with us.
Yeah, send us an email at podcast@votepropot.com. Call our message line at 240-257-2441. Join our Facebook group. We would appreciate that. And Andrew, tell them what else.
Well, we do a lot of stuff on social networking. We do that stuff too. Is that what you want me to talk about?
We could do that, yeah.
Yeah, that'll work.
talk about
That'll
that.
work. Whatever you feel like.
We do a lot, and we have been doing for years a lot of spreading the word about cannabis reform on social networking platforms. So please, join us on. Join the conversation on social networking. We want to hear from you. Tell us your thoughts, your opinions. Yell at us, scream at us. Tell us you love us. Tell us you hate us. We don't care. Well, I care, but these guys don't. But so go to Facebook.
Not really.
Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram, and do a search for Vote Pro Pot.